Good morning and welcome to episode number 68 of Business Unusual, Prospecting Through Uncertainty, podcast with pictures. We decided that podcasts were, everybody can do podcasts. We wanted to do webinars because we like being able to engage our audience and provide a lot of great content and information about what is happening in the world of sales and marketing as we're experiencing here in the Midwest. And in some cases, thanks to presenters like Susan today, they have great experience about what's happening nationally and sometimes even internationally. So I am very excited to introduce you to Susan Cantrell that I met during my networking, and she is with an organization called Sales Acceleration, and they're a group of fractional sales leaders, and they are doing a lot of information and data gathering about what is happening in the world of sales in general. And I invited Susan today to share her observations. So Susan, I'm delighted to have you with us and excited to learn from you today.
Well, thank you, Brendan, for having me, and good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here on a beautiful Friday morning. It's a little bit warm outside, so hopefully we're all in air conditioning here. And Brendan and I discussed, the topic I'm going to talk on today is the state of small to mid-sized businesses. And everyone defines small to mid-sized businesses a little bit differently. So I thought I would start with that, how we're kind of defining small to mid-sized businesses is those businesses between 500,000 revenue, usually up to $30 million revenue, usually under 100 employees. And some of our typical clients are usually in that $500,000 to $10 million range, and usually have 20 to 30 employees, although some of the companies that we serve are much bigger than that too. So up to, I've seen 70 million are some of the businesses that we work with around the country. So Brendan mentioned that I am with sales organization called Sales Acceleration. A little bit about my background. If I haven't met you, I am a native Kansas Cityan. I'm actually from Kansas City, Kansas, went to KU. I worked at the Kansas City Star for over 20 years. And I worked at Visit KC. So not only do I have sales in my background, but I ran sales, marketing, digital, special events, magazines, operations, and circulation operations throughout my career. So I've worked with teams as little as a startup, even though I just recently became an entrepreneur. I was a startup in the newspaper industry where I started several divisions from scratch and had staffs of 0 to 6 people, and then also up to over 300 at some points in my career. So kind of that range of all over the board. So you might ask where. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Hopefully. Brendan, are we still good?
I've got you. You're good.
Okay. So, like Brendan mentioned, Sales Acceleration is, if you think about it, it's kind of like a franchise, but I own my own LLC, which is Sterling Sales Strategies, but Sales Acceleration started about 10 years ago. It's an organization of more than 160 advisors around the country. And some of them have been doing this for 5 to 10 years and some under 5 years, but they work with small to mid-sized businesses all around the country, everywhere from, the East Coast to the West Coast to Florida to Texas. And there's sales assessments that we provide to businesses, and I think Brendan is going to send you after this session a little mini sales assessment that we have for free, but once we engage with customers, we send out a pretty lengthy 48 question that kind of covers 4 key areas of sales: strategy, methodology, analysis, and organization. And the good news is, what you might ask is, where is this data coming from that I'm talking about? And it's from over 2,300 surveys that completed this 48 question survey over the last, let's say, year and a half. So some of these responses are pre-COVID, and some of these are during COVID. So the actual range of these surveys is from like mid-2019 until March of this year. So it really encompasses kind of normal world versus crazy world versus everything in between. So that's what you're going to see the results from. Any questions about that? So high level insights and trends. It has been a crazy year for everyone, and 20% of new businesses fail during the first 2 years, 45% during the first 5 years, 65% during the first 10 years, and only 25% of new businesses make it to 15 years. So it's really critical to get things into shape quickly when you're a small to mid-sized business owners and be able to weather the storms like we've had the last year and a half for sure. The recent statistics, if you haven't seen them, is that only 63% of small businesses were profitable in 2020, and that's compared to 79% in 2019. So there was about a 23% drop of small businesses level of going from profitability to not profitability and wondering whether they're going to stay in business. So that's pretty scary, and obviously sales is a very critical reason why businesses stay in business or not. So this is what our survey results show, that the top 5 areas where the companies feel like they needed help enough that they needed to reach out and engage with a fractional sales leader, is that almost every single business had not done a competitive analysis. That kind of blew me away. Marketing spend, a lot of small business owners that I've talked to confuse sales and marketing, but the marketing spend, the new thing is digital, and it gives great analytics. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, but there's really no analysis of the ROI or analysis of the last couple of years of where the main leads have come from. What marketing forms? Was it digital? Was it SEO? Was it pay-per-click? Was it social media? Was it referral business? That kind of analysis is really important to know where to spend your future money. Otherwise, it's just kind of throwing it down the drain. The sales cycle. A lot of companies don't have the sales cycle documented, so that if they hire new employees and they leave things out, it's not really documented as to what needs to happen at that certain stage. And so that's a very critical step as well. Value propositions, I hope everyone's heard of the unique value proposition, but actually defining that and putting that into place and communicating that is very important. And then kind of an interesting, people know that they have prospects and current customers, but a lot of businesses don't define their prospects into kind of A, B, and C prospects. And we'll get into why that's important in a few minutes, but C prospects can sometimes be a lot easier to call on, but they're not going to pay off for the company as well. So you want to make sure that you're focused on the A prospects.
I think this is a good spot for us to ask, can you go back one slide for just a sec? Because I'd love to hear from our audience, where do you see most of your clients or the businesses that you are interacting with struggle out of these 5 areas? I would love to hear. So is it on the competitive analysis, understanding their ROI, having a documented sales process and tracking it, understanding their value proposition, particularly post-COVID, or organizing and calling on the right accounts? We'll give them a minute to respond, because I think sometimes it takes a little bit of time to type a thoughtful response, and I know we're going to hear some great information from our group, because we've got some wonderful sales thought leaders here. So if you could chat in with what you're seeing is the biggest gap. Okay. If we come in, focusing in the right areas is one area. So I would say that that fits under prospect scoring. Documenting a sales process. Seems like there's a couple of gaps. Keep chiming in as Susan goes through, because I do want to hear from you all about what your observations are throughout this process. Okay, Susan, I'll let you run with it again.
Okay, great. Yeah, keep chiming in with what you'd like to maybe focus on in some of these slides. So we'll dive in a little bit more into some of these areas. So some of the 4 key areas are 94% are struggling with sales analysis. So kind of the meat and potatoes, I would say, of sales is, do they have the right goals? Are there quotas? I find it somewhat surprising that a lot of businesses, when they ask people, well, what are your goals? Well, our goals are just to be better than last year. Well, what is last year? Is last year 2019 before COVID, or is last year 2020 in a down year? So when the owner's communicating kind of, vague goals like that to the team, it leaves very fuzzy areas in terms of the sales staff really doesn't know, if I do better than COVID, is everyone going to be happy? Or are we trying to rebound when a lot of companies are going back to the sales that they had in 2019, or even improving because they took the time during COVID to improve some of their processes? So it's really important to document a lot of the metrics and the reporting, and to make sure that everyone is on the same page about what your goals are each year. Compensation and incentives need to tie to those goals too, and a lot of times the compensation plans don't change for 4 or 5 years. So when the goals change and when products change, the commission plan should change, and the compensation plans, to make sure that they're aligning with that too. Sales methodology, territories, coverage, processes, CRM. Hopefully everyone on this call knows that CRMs are customer relationship management systems. That was probably the biggest surprise to me coming from the corporate world into working with small businesses again, is that most of the businesses that I've been working with, I wouldn't say most, but I would say probably 70%, are still managing with spreadsheets and not CRMs. So it's an opportunity area for sure to help with small businesses. The sales organization, staffing, hiring, training, role responsibilities. So it's very interesting. I'm sure everyone's been reading the news lately about, staffing is becoming a huge challenge, and it depends. Good sales help is hard to find. And I read a very interesting story yesterday about, the baby boomers, some of them that have been in the business that for 20, 25 years, and they're getting out of the business. A lot of them have moved from the corporate world and are on their own, or they retired early during COVID. And they're predicting like a 6% staffing shortage here in the next couple of years in high-level positions. So when you do hire, it's a very competitive world, which 6 months ago we wouldn't have been talking about that. It was a whole different equation. But right now, good salespeople are at a premium. Companies have to sell themselves, and they have to have onboarding plans and roles and responsibilities lined out. They have to sell their company, and have to make sure that they're investing in their salespeople, because there's so many companies that are right now with perks and training and incentives and everything else that you're not keeping up with the Joneses if you're not doing that. And then the sales strategy that we talked about a little bit before, the value proposition, and just making sure that competitors, and also the owner might know the competitor and the landscape, but when they start hiring people, the communication doesn't often follow. So that should be part of the onboarding training, is making sure that that competitive analysis, that a new employee knows exactly what the value proposition of your company is versus the competitors, and what areas you're going to be better than the competitors and what areas are going to be worse than the competitors. So sales strategy, we'll get into that, and that's what we said. Almost every single business has not done a competitive analysis. I'm sure probably most of us on the call have undergone a SWOT analysis, the strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threats. And this should be done not only for an owner's own business, but also for the competitor too, so that everyone on the team understands exactly what the strengths and weaknesses are and where they need to improve, and that should be part of the strategic plan going forward. 84%, they don't clearly articulate the unique selling proposition. So how does that happen? I'm curious. So I can tell you how I've done that in the past, and how I talk to companies about doing that is involve the whole company, or involve at least the leaders of the organization in coming up with the unique value proposition and making sure that it's up to date. Like Brendan mentioned, a lot of people haven't redone their unique value proposition in 5 years. So definitely post-COVID, everyone should be dusting off those unique value propositions and making sure that they're still valid. How else do you communicate it? I've put it in employee newsletters. I've put it in signs in the conference room. I've put it on weekly agendas of meetings. I've put it in signs in lunchrooms. I'm curious if anyone else has any input on how they've been able to see companies do that very effectively.
I love where I've got several clients that do a phenomenal job of sharing case studies and just tons of examples that highlight their unique selling proposition in real life throughout their marketing. That's where I have seen a lot of folks that are really positioning the whole COVID in their business, and all the changes that have happened post-pandemic. That's an area that I'm seeing people step a lot more into their customer engagement. It's interesting because as our access to our clients has shifted to where what was readily, once readily available, you could do a drop-in and see people, and now you can't. It seems as if people are definitely ramping up their communication with them virtually and through other materials. So that's been my observation. I'd love hearing from the folks in our group too.
Yeah, if there's anyone else that has good ideas on that, but my perception is that a lot of people have value propositions, but they're old, they're dusty, they're in a drawer, they're in a folder on a computer, and there's been a lot of new hires and nobody else knows that unique selling proposition.
Well, and in some cases it may no longer be relevant. That's been right. One of my my biggest observation is what people were selling before 2020. We're in a completely different world now, and people just they didn't put their track shoes on. It's interesting. So I can certainly see that.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the first thing I ask folks is, have you redone your strategic plan? Have you redone your value proposition? Those are kind of the things that everyone, hopefully has been working on the last 3 or 4 months as the vaccinations have been rolled out, on how they're going to hit the ground running and try to rebound from a down year. So Brendan mentioned this, that was a perfect segue from you, Brendan, a minute ago, is that, companies often promote a bunch of products and features, but you just said that you've seen some companies do a really good job of this by doing case studies in terms of where they've been able to take advantage of the unique value proposition, and that's why they chose your company. and that's what solved the prospect's needs. So that's how we need to kind of flip the script in terms of making sure that the marketing doesn't just talk about, well, we have this and we have this and we have this. Well, that's checklists. You know, what does that do that nobody else does? And how has that helped one business and why they chose your company over all the other businesses?
It truly is about social proof. And
Yeah.
and that is one of the biggest factors that I've seen shift in how buyers are engaging with companies. And I find myself doing it. It used to be I would actually go and research different products. Now I skip all the product research and go straight to the reviews. And I make my decision based on what others are saying about their experience with a particular product.
That's exactly what I do too. Yeah, that's so funny. But yeah, it's documenting and really trying to tell those stories. It's like, you know, I mean, everyone's used to Amazon where you go in and you look at a product and then you see, oh, 10 people said, you know, it looks great when you look at it, but when you get it in person, it falls apart the first 2 weeks. Don't buy it, you know? So it's really paying attention to why your customers are buying from you and making sure that you're telling those stories when you're out in front of prospects. So sales methodology, I talked about a lot of companies don't track their ROI. I included just kind of a brief report. So I spent probably the last 20 years of my career in the digital world, and what I loved about the digital world, and I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but in the old-fashioned newspaper world, it was how do you track your response? And the only way you could track it really was if you ran a coupon, and people would bring in 300 coupons from an ad. And now everything has such great metrics, but I find that a lot of small and mid-sized businesses aren't looking at them, or they don't even know what their Google Analytics are. They don't know where their site traffic's coming from. But digital is so great because it gives you such good information about where your leads are coming from, who's converting on your website, where are those leads coming from. If you're buying media and they say they're bringing business to you, but you don't see it in your Google Analytics, it's really maybe not bringing business to you.
And we actually did an episode on Google Analytics and installing it on your site and measuring it. So there's one, if you all need a tutorial or if you know someone that needs a tutorial. Chris, my partner who helped me start this webinar series at the beginning of 2020, did a really great walkthrough of your real metrics versus vanity metrics. And what Susan is talking about is so incredibly important.
And this is just an example from, you know, really a drug company that talks about where, you know, how did your pay-per-click advertising perform, and how does that vary from the previous month, and then how does that vary from the previous year? Did you invest 10,000 more a month in pay-per-click, but it's not only working 10% better? So it's really, you know, putting that in a spreadsheet and seeing where your leads are coming from and have they changed over the last 3 years too. So this is just kind of an example of one of the reports that we were able to provide for digital campaigns. Separate and distinct sales territories. So, you know, a lot of times small businesses, the owners may be doing a lot of the selling, and then they hire 1 or 2 salespeople, and it's just kind of a free-for-all. So, you know, making sure that the sales territories are separate, distinct, they make sense. I'll tell you a little story. As I walked into a situation about 5 years ago where we had quite a few clients that were about an hour away from our location, and we had 4 different sales reps calling on those accounts every week. And when you looked at the time resource, took about 3 hours for the typical call. They were all calling on accounts in that town on different days of the week. And so, I restructured that so that one salesperson was calling on all 6 of those accounts that were in that town. They could stagger the appointments all in one day, one half day, and that saved about 20 hours of sales time a week just by paying attention to making sure you're being efficient when accounts require personal calls, and making sure that, things are even. Also, sometimes you get a salesperson that's great that never wants to give up accounts, but they're overloaded with current customers and they don't have time to prospect for new business. So you also have to evaluate whether that salesperson is a good, I don't know if anyone's heard the term, but the terms in my career were always hunters and farmers. So if you're a good hunter, that means you're great at new business. And so maybe your territory should be really focused on new business. And we all needed farmers, the ones that would nurture our current count, make sure that they're happy and that they come back year over year. So sometimes those territories match those skill sets too. So it's not only making sure that they're even, but it's making sure that they match the skill sets of the salesperson that you have in place. Does that make sense?
Well explained.
So game plan. So CRM. We'll go back to CRM. It's really hard to see that type on there. I apologize for that. But I'm curious to ask, who is still, of the businesses that everyone works with, how many do you find that are utilizing the CRM versus spreadsheets? Because that's, like I said, one of the biggest surprises for me in the last year is how many companies are still using CRMs or are still using spreadsheets. I apologize.
One of my newer clients, it's taken me 3 months to get them on board with using a CRM. And it's so funny because the comment she made this week is she said, I didn't realize how much time I spent going from spreadsheet to spreadsheet now that I'm not doing it. She's like, I've got an extra 2 hours a week just in the time it's saving me from going through data. And I'm like, and this has been going on for 4 months that it took me to get you to adopt this.
Yeah, and it's, in saving the right spreadsheet and making sure that you're sending out the right spreadsheet. And I always use this analogy that, I used to say, what if you got hit by the beer truck tomorrow? But now I say, what if you win the lottery and you're going to sell your business tomorrow? You have to have, or one of your salespeople is. So what if you have one salesperson that brings in and manages most of your business, and they win the lottery and quit, and they take their spreadsheets with them, and all you have is an outdated spreadsheet from 6 months ago that doesn't say who they've called on in the last 6 months. It doesn't have the notes. My budget's in January. Please call me in November. That's when I really want to talk to you. You don't know any of that information as a business owner. And so that's really what I've been honing in on, helping business owners make sure that they're converting to CRMs. And one, a lot of people don't know what they are, and then two, they're intimidated by them and think that everything is really expensive. And there are everything from free CRMs to really inexpensive CRMs, all the way up, depending on what the budget is for the individual client. So I would say this.
What CRMs do you like?
Well, the one that I've been probably recommending the most is Pipedrive. Is anyone familiar with that?
I am familiar with it, and I think I've got a client that is on, or he was on that. There was another one that he was talking about. I know Zoho is one that I've got a client right now that's absolutely in love with it because it coordinates with their bookkeeping solution. So they were able to integrate it so that they basically have what is essentially the ERP, the enterprise level solution, only it's for like $40 a month, which is way cheaper than most enterprise level solutions.
Yeah, Zoho has been kind of one of the up and comers the last 2 years. A little insider tip, though, that I found out from our corporate friends at Sales Acceleration is that all the major executives just went from Zoho to Pipedrive.
Whoa!
So they are concerned about the strategic direction of Zoho because they've lost a lot of their executive team on that.
Wow.
So
Well, that's
it'll
good
be
intel.
interesting to see how that. And HubSpot, you know, there's a lot of people that use the free version of HubSpot and then you upgrade into HubSpot, and a lot of people like the integration of social media into HubSpot. So that's another one that I hear about a lot. And Clarity is the one that I'm currently using, which I really enjoy, that I'd never heard of before. And then everyone's heard of Salesforce, but most people don't have the budget or the resources to manage Salesforce. So it's usually not for small and medium-sized businesses.
Salesforce has actually, here's something new about Salesforce. They've actually added a free version of Salesforce, and they've added a small business version that I think is like, I don't know, $12 or $15 or $20 a month. It's pretty cheap. And then one of my favorites is Nimble. And I like Nimble because it integrates with all of your social platforms. So when you pull up somebody's contact, you'll also see their activity across their social media. So you can tell, you know, if you've been trying to get a hold of a prospect for 10 days and he's not responding, you can see from his Facebook page that he's on vacation in Cancun. So
that's pretty cool.
It's pretty neat. And it plays well with other solutions as well. I've got it tied to my MailChimp email service provider. So that's the other thing, is you want things that are going to cooperate with all your systems.
Yeah, and this is just kind of a good chart that shows, you know, a lot of times even people that have CRMs that I've talked to said, yeah, we have one, but we don't make anyone use it. And so if you have one and you're paying for one and you're not using it, then, you know, that's a problem as well. So a lot of times all people use it for is just to put their customers in there, but they don't require the salespeople to update it. It's not part of the performance plan that they keep it updated. The managers aren't in there examining whether they're updating it every week. So it's really got to be analyzed too, to make sure that the salespeople are doing what they're supposed to with the CRM. And a lot of, only 30% have a sales dashboard, and only 18% are creating forecasts, so that, you know, it's really hard for an owner to see, well, what's my revenue going to look like in 3 months or 6 months or a year from now, and how do I spend money? Should I hire another salesperson? Do I need to lay off somebody? Do I need to change things? So forecasting is very important too. And then just putting all the information in the CRM is important, so that if the salesperson has time to go in there, some people just use it all the time and get all their information from there. And think about when you hire a new sales employee and you don't have every minute of their day documented on onboarding, they can go in there and learn a lot just from the CRM system. So this is when we talk about forecasting and goals. Also a lot of, you know, when I say, what is your goal for the year? And people say, well, it's to do better than last year, and they don't know if last year is 2019 or 20, then that kind of parlays into goals. So the goals should follow what the year's budget is. So if the year's budget is, let's just say $100,000 for simplicity's sake, $100,000, and there's 2 salespeople, and both of their goals are only $300,000 for the year. Well, how are you going to get, I mean, $30,000 for the year? How are you going to get to that $100,000 if the sum of each of their goals for the year is only $60,000, but your goal is $100,000? So, you know, the trick over the years is you can't count, the bigger your sales team is, the more you can't count on every single salesperson making goal. So you have to make sure that the sum of the goals is more than what your goal is for the month, and look at history on how have you hit goal and how has each salesperson hit goal over the last year, and make some assumptions that you're going to need about a 10% cushion. And so then you goal at 10% over what you want, and that's how you're going to get it. And so the sales metrics are a lot of times not clearly defined and understood. So that's the other thing. In a lot of organizations I've been, it's been very secretive. I always believed in every weekly agenda, here's the latest forecast, here's how we're doing, we're 20,000 away from goal this month, it looks like next month is going to be tough because we lost this major customer, we're going to need 2 new customers to come in to make up for that customer. It's got to be communicated to the entire sales team, and they've got to know if they've got to step up and make up for somebody else's losses. And a lot of times that information is only handled in one-on-one sessions, and it's not a team effort. And the more you involve the team, the more you're going to succeed. And then, it's just kind of basics too, is, compensation plans, just having the salesperson sign them means that they've read them, they understand, and they agree with them. So it's hard for a salesperson to come down after you've paid them a certain amount and there might be a discrepancy between what they got paid and what they thought they were going to get paid. Said, you signed the sheet. So that simple step is, how many times do we all go to the doctor's office and we have to sign those forms and everything? It says, we understand what we're doing, we understand that you're keeping our records private. It's the same thing. Make sure that they've had the opportunity to read how you're going to pay them, and you're on the same page. So the compensation analysis is, you see in the upper left corner, that's the main one to pay attention to, because the ideal format is a 50-50, where the company shares in the salesperson's success. So it's 50% base, but there's 50% at risk. And analysis over the entire country says that that's the compensation plan that brings the best results. And yet a lot of companies, you can see 32% pay a high base salary with low commission, which of course is great. And honestly, in today's environment, it might take that, or it might take some guarantees this year with the competitive environment right now of hiring good salespeople. But my preference would be to pay that 50% base, 50% commission, but guarantee the commission for the first 6 to 12 months to allow them time to ramp up. That's the way around it, so that you're not guaranteeing a higher base salary in year 2, but you have given them time to ramp up and build up their territory. Does that make sense? A lot of companies also do all base salary and no commission. That's, in my mind, just crazy. And then there's a low base
salesperson to not perform.
Yeah, I mean, especially in today's competitive environment, it's like, it's just, you're just asking people to just do the bare minimum on that. And then a low base salary, high commission is going to be really tough in today's environment because it's so competitive. And 100% commission is only 7%. That used to be a lot stronger, and it's finally going away. A lot of companies used to do 100% commission, but boy, that's tough to find good salespeople that want to live by that. I'll tell you, you could spend a year looking for that right salesperson.
And then you've lost all that opportunity.
Yeah, it's really tough, and you've got to share risk reward. You've got to show them that you're investing in them when you hire them, and that you're going to pay them out. The other thing that this doesn't really get into is just commission plans too, but one of my pet peeves over the year is, starting out as a salesperson, being a sales manager for over 25 years, is you don't cap the top performers either. Sometimes the top performers in a company make more than the owners, and that's okay. I mean, you want your top salespeople to feel like they have ownership in the company and that they're doing great, and that you're not going to restrict them or punish them by having a great year, because the next year might be really tough. So that's the way it goes. You might have a great year, big new client come in, next year might be tough. You balance those out, and you keep good salespeople there by making sure that they're paid well and they're happy. So sales training, while you're on this, this is obviously, you see the importance of training and webinars and making sure that you're on top of the things, but how many people have seen training manuals sitting on some bookshelf that hasn't been dusted off in 10 or 20 years? And they pull that out and they give it to a new employee and they say, oh, here's our sales manual. Well, have they even looked at it in 5 or 10 years to know that half of it's probably not even valid, probably more than half of it's not valued. And then a lot of times companies invest in sales training, but then they don't enforce it. So you know, you might go through a 5-day process and then it's done, and then you're saying, okay, did you like the training? Yeah, okay. Well, what did you learn? This. Okay, great. And then you're done and you're moving on to the next thing, instead of saying, okay, what are the top 3 things that you're going to implement from that sales training? And then let's look at those every month. Let's make sure that we're doing those, that we've invested the time in sales training, that it's going to pay off for us. Also, attending sales calls all throughout my career, I've been a big, what I call a player coach, and why is that important to attend sales calls? Well, think of the last year to how many owners, if they have 1 or 2 salespeople that were having Zoom calls with all their clients, they might not have seen their customers in 2 years. The owners haven't gotten that feedback from some of their top customers about how they're doing, or what their product needs to change, or does their pricing model still make sense for them? Does their distribution make sense? Are they frustrated because they're not getting product in time? All of those factors, the owners need to be hearing it firsthand from the top clients. So very, very important that in these days, you're not only sitting in on personal calls, but also virtual calls too, so that the owner and the top management is hearing from the customers themselves.
And it's never been easier to do than today.
No, I mean, and you're not taking 3 hours out of the day. A lot of times, if you set in, you know, and owners made a goal of, I'm going to set in on 4 calls a week or 2 calls a week, even start small like that, then that's 2 hours a week. And it used to be a full day, because by the time you drove there and back and had lunch with the client or whatever, it's that way. So maybe it is just 2 Zoom calls, but you know, the customer appreciates it. They feel like the owner cares. And then you're also evaluating the performance of the salesperson. You can quickly tell if that customer has a good relationship with your salesperson, or if they're doing the things that you've instructed them to do and are evaluating them on too. You can see if they're bringing up the new product. If the customer comes on and says, wow, I haven't talked to you in 8 months, and yet, you know, the salesperson's been telling you that you're talking to that client every month, you're quickly going to see the disconnect. So it's very important to have that especially for the top clients. So here's just, you know, a lot of people just rate themselves poorly if knowing if sales training is effective. So part of that is also surveying the people that went through the training. A lot of money is spent on sales training, but not following up on seeing, did they like the sales training? Was it effective? What do you wish? It's just like after this session, I'll look forward to your comments. Is there anything I could have done better, or information that I'm not providing you today that would have been very valuable to you? And the next time I do this presentation, I'll make sure it's included. So I appreciate that feedback. The same thing should be said when you put your sales team or employees through training. Is, did they like it? Before you invest in it again, it's like, you know, don't sign up for 2 or 3 more sessions unless you know that they think they really got good information and they're going to utilize some of that training going forward. So we know there's sales training taking place, but not enough of it. And we don't know that sales leadership is really establishing clear expectations for what they're going to do with that training. But it's critical, especially now, as fast as the world's changing, and as fast as just think of pricing models. Like, I'm in the market for a car right now, and it's just crazy because, you know, cars, you can't even get cars. Used cars are up like 30%, and new cars, you can't even get them for 4 months. So, you know, knowing how much has that business changed. They don't negotiate now. You know, it's like, you want a car or not? You could get it in 4 months. So making sure that their sales staff is all on the same page is, we don't have to discount, because the client either wants the car, or we'll have somebody else that can pay for it, because we're only getting in 10 cars right now. So you got to fill in that gap for your sales team. And that's pretty much it for today. So I hope I'm a few minutes late, Brendan.
Fantastic information. Thank you so much for sharing, Susan. So let's hear from our audience. Let me go in and see. You covered a lot of great information. were there any areas that folks would like to dig a little deeper or unpack any points of this conversation that Susan has shared? Can use the
Love to hear
chat.
any questions you have.
Because
And
I
is there
know,
information missing too?
you know, Angela, can I call on you? Because I know you're in the trenches in this topic all day, every day, and twice on Tuesday. I think I've unmuted you. Give it a go. Are you still with me? Ha, did I catch you surfing Facebook, Angela? Where is she? Of course, I don't think the system's cooperating right now. Some days it works really well at unmuting and letting people contribute to conversations, and other days it just doesn't do much of anything for interaction.
Well, please give Brendan feedback on this. This is kind of new data that we just got in the last month on what the surveys have said in the last year and a half. So if there's information that you wish that I would have or that I would have covered that would be helpful, I would love to know that so I can include it the next time I give this presentation.
So we've got some really good feedback here. So we've heard from Chris, competitive analysis, marketing spend, and prospect score are almost, let me see if I can open this up, are most underserved from his personal observations. And I think he's working in a mid-market distribution kind of arena. And then, oh, Chris has a really good point. Well said. Selling is identifying customer needs and addressing those needs with specific tailored solutions, building your value. And then another one, virtual meetings are game changing, still not as effective as face-to-face interactions. I'm getting ready to sneeze. My apologies. So great feedback, everyone. So,
well, thank you all so much for listening to me this morning. And I'd love, if anyone wants a conversation, I think Brendan's going to be sending out my contact information, and I'd love to set up a separate Zoom call with you and talk more in depth about how we might collaborate together in the future. And I appreciate the time. Have a great week.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time this morning. It was good having you back with us. And make sure you join us next week. Dave Patrick of Wise Webs is going to be sharing how he had his best year ever during COVID. And he's going to be talking specifically about the marketing pivots that he made in his business and that he has also done for his clients that have allowed him to capture record-breaking years there as well. So you're going to want to come back and join us next week. We've got a wonderful conversation. And then the following week, we've got Monty Clark back in talking LinkedIn campaigns. So we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up, great topics. Thank you so much, Susan, for your time today. And I'm excited to see what everybody does with the information they gathered today.
Yes, thank you. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Okay, everybody, remember, to get what you want, you've got to help others get what they want. Have a great day and good selling.